in all projects, there's going to be a weak player, and it's not going to be the same in all projects. It's all context and circumstance driven. It may well be that what's missing from a project is equity, and my understanding of some First Nations projects is that it's difficult in many instances for the First Nations community to come up with equity. Now, there is a way though to structure the deal so that the ability of a party that wants to invest in a project but doesn't have the revenues to use the revenue stream that comes from the credits as a way to pay for the equity. So in an instance where the opportunity is on First Nations land, or there is a pending land claim that allows the consent and accommodate negotiation to proceed, where a First Nations community could leverage its ability to influence the project into an equity position, where a significant portion of the carbon credits earned on a project are used to finance that equity position. So the money's not going to the project vehicle from the carbon finance, it's going to the First Nations community that are then using it to fund their equity participation, or in some instances to repay a loan that may have financed that equity position in the first place. So you'll hear people talk about carbon credit projects as being flexible mechanisms. This is really what they mean by that it's up to the parties involved in the project to decide how they're going to allocate the benefit and make the project happen. I've already made this point. With product standards, the incentive tends to go to the project vehicle or the manufacturer of the project, of the product, and will become more of a return on investment of the project vehicle or the manufacturing entity, and impact on its profitability. This will be of significance to traditional lenders. If you have a reasonably solid project where you have an offtake agreement, if you go back to Barbara's diagram in your mind, the banks are going to be much happier if there's an additional revenue stream coming in from the activities into the project entity, right? The lenders are always a bit happier when the borrower has a greater means of repaying. Now, it's possible to use the credits, the stream of credits. Remember, credits come out on a regular basis, depending on the crediting period of the regime that you're working with. It can be from 7 to 21 years. Some of the forestry projects are even longer. So you can use the credit stream as security. You can assign the rights to the lender to receive the credits in the event of default, that sort of thing, and it makes the project easier to work with. Similarly, with in the case of a wood pellet business, the project entity is going to be giving very serious covenants to the lenders, saying that it will ensure that its forestry operations, or the sources that it gets the wood pellets, the wood fiber from to make the pellets, as a sustainable forestry, to preserve access to that zero-rated accounting. Let's go back to my slides now, please. Okay. So I've been talking about what are the consequences for structuring essentially throughout this presentation. You need to sit down and look at the opportunity and then try to make it fit into context. You need to look at the parties who are required to make the project work and try to decide how to target the incentive to increase the likelihood that the project will proceed successfully. And I've referred to here is that in some cases the strategy is to get as much of the carbon revenue to the weakest link in the project as possible, so that the project happens. And the flexible mechanism in the carbon credit context allows this. So you might be faced with a renewable energy project that has a higher rate of return in the REC market, but it's more difficult to get going because the REC incentive goes to the project vehicle. It doesn't go to one of the needy participants. It doesn't go to the landlord. It doesn't go to the to one of the equity participants. And you may end up choosing to structure your project as a carbon credit project rather than as a renewable energy project feeding renewable power into a renewable portfolio standard. So it's not obvious which way will work, and you need to fuss about this. I've already referred to the use of carbon credits to finance First Nations equity in projects. Now, I think this is an important financing tool that will become more important as the Canadian regimes evolve. And we're all hopeful that a compliance regime will come into place, that WCI will get implemented in 2012 in BC, Ontario, and Quebec, that the feds will eventually do something. And what I would encourage the First Nations project developers that are that are participating to do is to look at ways to take advantage of these incentives to enhance their ability to participate in the equity of a project. And essentially that means linking the revenue streams from the carbon credit plays into a structure that allows you to take equity. And I think that's my last slide. How are we going to proceed now, you guys? Are we going to go to general questions?
I think that we're planning on closing the session. Questions will be gathered. There's a chat window where participants have included all their questions, and I believe that they will be answered either, if they haven't been answered already, that we'll be revisiting these questions and answering them in due time. Yeah, so I guess before we close, I should thank all our presenters who shared with us their valuable insights on carbon financing. I'd also like to thank the participants who tuned in, and I'd like to remind them that another webinar, another First Nations Carbon Collaborative webinar will be held next Wednesday, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next week's webinar will focus on offset projects in the forestry sector. Robert Falls from ERA Carbon Offsets and Brioni Penn from Living Carbon will be presenting next week. So thanks again, everyone, for your participation, and yeah, we're looking forward to our next week's webinar. Take care, all. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.